All right. Welcome to Dude Reads the News. We'll go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, for BBC, 9 children among 27 dead in Texas flooding as search continues for missing girls. Um, okay. I know Texas is the big thing going on in the States. So we'll jump on that right now. It doesn't look like there's anything. Everything's currently in the middle of updating on that information. What does this one say? This is just a watch. It's crazy. Okay. U.S. aid workers wounded, says Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. A controversial aid operation for Gaza, backed by Israel and the U.S., says two of its workers have been injured in an attack while giving out relief. Two militants threw grenades at the aid center in Khan Yunis, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation said. It blames Hamas for Saturday's incident. The injured U.S. workers are in stable conditions and are receiving medical treatment. No other aid workers or civilians were harmed, the group added. The GHF began its operations in May, distributing aid from several sites in southern and central Gaza. The system has been widely criticized for forcing vast numbers of people to walk through combat zones. Since the GHF was launched, Israeli forces have killed more than 400 Palestinians trying to collect food aid, the UN and local doctors say. Israel says the new distribution system stops aid going to Hamas. The attack comes as Hamas has indicated it is ready for talks on a ceasefire with Israel. The GHF said the incident occurred at the conclusion of an otherwise successful distribution in which thousands of Gazans safely received food. The organization added it had repeatedly warned of credible threats from Hamas, including plans to target American personnel, Palestinian aid workers, and civilians. Hamas has not commented on the incident. Meanwhile, Gaza's civil defense agency said 32 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli military operations on Saturday. On Friday, Hamas said it was ready for more talks on a ceasefire agreement put forward by the U.S. The plan is believed to include the staggered release of Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. The BBC understands that Hamas wants amendments to the draft, including a U.S. guarantee that hostilities will not resume when the ceasefire ends. Hamas also wants the GHF to be scrapped and aid to be distributed by the UN and its partners only. Israel has previously rejected such demands. 50 hostages are still being held in Gaza, at least 20 of whom were believed to be alive. According to Gaza's health ministry, at least 70 people have been killed in the territory by Israeli forces in the last 24 hours. The ministry said that the total death toll in Gaza has risen to 57,338 during Israel's war against Hamas. The Israeli military launched its campaign in response to the Hamas attacks on 7 October 2023, in which about 1,200 people were killed and 251 others were taken hostage. More death and destruction by the dipshits and Brooks and Capehart on Trump's total control over Washington. U.S. completes deporting 8 men from various nations to South Sudan after weeks of legal battle. Israeli airstrikes kill 14 Palestinians in Gaza, another 10 killed in the attacks. Excuse me. Excuse me. Ukraine says it struck a Russian airbase as Russia launched hundreds of drones into Ukraine. Ukraine said it struck a Russian airbase on Saturday while Russia continued to pound Ukraine with hundreds of drones overnight as part of a stepped up bombing campaign that has dashed hope for a breakthrough in efforts to end the more than 3-year-old war. Ukraine's military general staff said the Ukraine forces had struck the Borzyoglebsk air base in Russia Voronezh region, describing it as the home base of Russia's Su-34, Su-35s, and Su-30 SM fighter jets. Writing on Facebook, the general staff said that it hit a depot containing glide bombs, training aircraft, and possibly other aircraft. Russian officials did not immediately comment on the attack. Such attacks on Russian air bases aim to dent Russia's military capabilities and demonstrate Ukraine's capability to hit high-value targets in Russia. Last month, Ukraine said it destroyed more than 40 Russian planes stationed at several airfields deep in Russian territory in a surprise drone attack. Russia fired 322 drones and decoys into Ukraine overnight into Saturday, Ukraine's Air Force said. Of these, 157 were shot down and 135 were lost, likely having been electronically jammed. According to the Air Force, Ukraine's western Kalmynsky region was the main target of the attack. Regional Governor Shari Tirin said Saturday that no damage, injuries, or deaths has been reported. Russia has been stepping up its long-range attacks on Ukraine. Waves of drones and missiles targeted Kiev overnight into Friday, and the largest aerial assault since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began on Saturday. Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said that the number of people killed in the assault had increased to 2. A further 31 people were wounded. The fresh wave of attacks came after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Friday that he had a very important, productive phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump. The two leaders discussed how Ukrainian air defenses might be strengthened, possible joint weapons produced between the U.S. and Ukraine, and broader U.S.-led efforts to end the war with Russia, according to a statement by Zelensky. Asked Friday night by reports about the Trump call, the call, Trump said, "We had a very good call, I think." When asked about finding a way to end the fighting, Trump said, "I don't know. I can't tell you whether or not that's going to happen." The U.S. has paused some shipments of military aid to Ukraine, including crucial air defense missiles. Ukraine's main European backers are considering how they can help pick up the slack. Zelensky says plans are afoot to build up Ukraine's domestic arms industry, but scaling up will take time. Russia's defense ministry said it shot down 94 Ukrainian drones overnight into Saturday, along with 45 further drones Saturday morning and early afternoon. No casualties were reported, but local officials in the Saratov region said 25 apartments were damaged by Ukrainian drones in the city of Engels. 4 Ukrainian drones were shot down while approaching Moscow on Saturday. According to Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin, air traffic was briefly halted as a precaution at one of Moscow's airports, Sheremetyevo. Russia's aviation authority, Rosaviatsia, said. Whew. I swear, some of these Russian names are harder to pronounce than some of the Middle Eastern names that I've been trying to read. So, also, I'm just having a hard time reading. Okay. Where are we at? We're at 10 minutes? Okay. Israeli airstrike kills 14 Palestinians in Gaza. Another 10 killed in attack on the food aid site. U.S. completes deporting men, various nations in South Sudan after weeks of legal battle. 8 men deported from the United States in May and held under guard for weeks at American military base in the African nation of Djibouti. While their legal challenges played out in court and now have reached the Trump administration's intended destination, war-torn South Sudan, a country the State Department advises against travel to due to the crime, kidnapping, and armed conflict. The immigrants from Cuba, Laos, Mexico, Myanmar, Vietnam, and South Sudan arrived in South Sudan on Friday after a federal judge cleared the way for the Trump administration to relocate them in a case that had gone to the Supreme Court, which had permitted their removal from the U.S. administration. Officials said the men had been convicted of violent crimes in the U.S. This is a win for the rule of law, safety, and security of the American people, said Homeland Security spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin in a statement Saturday announcing the men's arrival in South Sudan, a chaotic country in danger once more of collapsing into civil war. The Supreme Court on Thursday cleared a way for the transfer of the men who had been put on the flight in May bound for South Sudan. That meant that the South Sudan transfer could be completed after the flight was detoured to a base in Djibouti where they where they met where they men where the men were held in a converted shipping container. The flight was detoured after a federal judge found that the administration had violated his order by failing to allow the men a chance to challenge the removal. The court's conservative majority had ruled in June that immigration officials could quickly deport people to third countries. The majority halted an order that had allowed immigrants to challenge any removal to countries outside their homeland where they could be in danger. A flurry of court hearings on Independence Day resulted in a temporary hold on the deportations while a judge evaluated a last-ditch by the men's before the judge appeal by the men before the judges decided he was powerless to halt their removals, and that the person best positioned to rule on the request of was a Boston judge whose rulings led to the initial halt of the administration's effort to begin deportations to South Sudan. By Friday evening, that judge had issued a brief ruling concluding the Supreme Court had tied its hands. The men had final orders of removal. Immigration and customs enforcement officials have said authorities have reached agreement with other countries to house immigrants if authorities cannot quickly send them back to their homelands. I swear to God, dude, most of these Associated Press articles sound like they were written by AI. And if it wasn't for the the misspellings and like the bad grammar in some of this, I would believe it. Israel killed 78 Palestinians in Gaza, at least 9 of them near GHF 8 hub. Texas floods, death toll rises to 27 as rescuers search for missing children. Going hungry, more than 700 Palestinians killed seeking aid in Gaza. Wrong, Trump administration completes deportations to South Sudan. End is near. Will Kabul become first big city without water by 2030? The city of 6 million people could soon run out of water amid climate change, sanctions, and governance failures, say experts. Kabul, a city of over 6 million people, could become the first modern city to run out of water in the next 5 years, a new report has warned. Groundwater levels in the Afghan capital have dropped drastically due to over extraction and the effects of climate change, according to a report published by nonprofit AmeriCorps. So, in Kabul's water crisis is sorry. So, is Kabul's water crisis at a tipping point, and do Afghan authorities have the resources and expertise to address this issue? The depths of the crisis. Kabul's aquifer levels have plummeted 25 to 30 meters in the past decade, with extractions of water exceeding natural recharge by its staggering 44 million cubic meters a year, the report published in April this year noted. If the current trend continues, Kabul aquifers will become dry by 2030, posing an existential threat to the Afghan capital, according to the report. This could also cause its displacement of some 3 million Afghan residents, it said. The report said UNICEF projected that nearly half of Kabul's underground bore wells, the primary source of drinking water for residents, are already dry. It also highlights widespread water contamination. Up to 80% of groundwater is believed to be unsafe, with high levels of sewage, arsenic, and salinity. Conflict, climate change, and government failures. Experts point to a combination of factors behind the crisis: climate change, governance failures, and increasing pressures on existing resources as the city's population has expanded from less than 1 million in 2001 to roughly 6 million people today. 2 decades of U.S. led military intervention in Afghanistan also played a role in the crisis. It has forced more people to move to Kabul, while governance in the rest of the country suffered. The prediction is based on the growing gap between groundwater recharge and annual water extraction. These trends have been consistently observed over recent years, making the forecast credible, said Asim Mayar, the water resource management expert and former lecturer at Kabul Polytechnic University. It reflects a worst case scenario that could materialize by 2030 if no effective interventions are made, he added. Najibullah Sadid, senior researcher and a member of the Afghanistan Water and Environment Professionals Network, said that it was impossible to put a timeline on where the capital city would run dry, but he conceded that Kabul's water problems are grave. Nobody can claim when the last well will run dry, but what we know is that as the groundwater levels further drop, the capacity of deep aquifers becomes less. Imagine the groundwater as a bowl with depleting water, he said. We know the end is near, he said. Over extraction highlights divides. A vast portion of the Afghan capital relies on underground bore wells, and as water levels drop, people dig deeper or in different locations looking for sources of water. According to an August 2024 report by the National Statistics Directorate, there are approximately 310,000 drilled wells across the country, according to the Mercy Corps' report. It is estimated that there are also nearly 120,000 unregulated bore wells across Kabul. In a 2023 UN report found that nearly 49% of bore wells in Kabul are dry, while others are functioning at only 60% efficiency. The water crisis, Mayar said, exposes the divide between the city's rich and poor. Wealthier residents can afford to drill deeper boreholes, further limiting access for the poorest, he said. The crisis affects the poorest first. The signs of this divide are evident in longer lines outside of public water taps or private water tankers, says Abdul Dahari Achkazai, director of the Environmental Protection Trainings and Development Organization, a Kabul based climate protection NGO. Poorer residents, often children, are forced to continually search for sources of water. Every evening, even late at night, when I am returning home from work, I see young children with small cans in their hands looking for water. They look hopeless at navigating life collecting water for their homes rather than studying or learning, he said. Additionally, Sidid said Kabul's already depleted water resources were being exploited by the over 500 beverage and mineral water companies in the capital city, all of which are using Kabul's groundwater. Alakazi, a popular Afghan soft drinks company, alone extracts nearly 1 billion liters of water over a year, 2.5 million liters a day, according to Sadid's calculation. Al Jazeera sent Alakaze questions about its water extraction on June 21st, but has yet to receive a response. Kabul Sadid said also had more than 400 hectares, that's 9,884 acres, of greenhouses to grow vegetables, which suck up 4 billion liters of water every year. According to his calculations, the list of entities using Kabul water is long, he said. Repeated droughts, early snowmelt, and reduction in snowfall. The water shortages is further compounded by climate change. Recent years have seen a significant reduction in precipitation across the country. The three rivers, Kabul River, Pagman River, and Lagar River, that replenished Kabul's groundwater rely heavily on snow and glacier melt water from the Hindu Kush Mountains. The Mercy Corps reported noted, however, between October 23 and January 2024, Afghanistan only received only 45 to 60% of the average precipitation during the peak winter season compared to previous years. Mayar, the former lecturer at Kabul's Polytechnic University, said that while it was difficult to quantify exactly how much of the crisis was caused by climate change, extreme weather events had only added to Kabul's woes. Climate related events such as repeated droughts, early snowmelts, and reduced snowfall have clearly diminished groundwater recharge opportunities, he said. Additionally, increased air temperatures had led to greater evaporation, rising agricultural water consumption, said Sidid from Afghanistan Water and Environment Professionals New Network. Sorry. While several provinces have experienced water scarcity, particularly within agrarian communities, Kabul remains the worst affected due to its growing population. Decades of conflict. Sadid argued Kabul's crisis runs deeper than the impact of climate change, compounded by years of war, weak governance, and sanctions on the aid dependent country. Much of the funds channeled into the country were diverted to security for the first 2 decades of the century. Since the Taliban's return to power in 2021, funding has been used to tackle an escalating humanitarian crisis. Western sanctions have also significantly stymied development projects that could have helped Kabul better manage the current water crisis. As a result, authorities have struggled with the maintenance of pipelines, canals, and dams, including basic tasks like desedimentation. The crisis is already beyond the capacity of the current de facto authorities, Mayar said, referring to the Taliban. In well managed cities, such impacts are mitigated throughout robust water governance and infrastructure. Kabul lacks such capacity, and the current authorities are unable to address the problem without external support, he added. As a result, environmental resilience projects have taken a back seat. Several planned initiatives, including projects for artificial groundwater recharge, were suspended following the Taliban takeover. Miyar pointed out sanctions continue to restrict organizations and donors from funding and implementing essential water related projects in Afghanistan, he said. Sadid pointed out one example, an A water supply project funded by the German Development Bank KfW, along with European agencies, could have supplied 44 billion liters of water annually to parts of Kabul from Logar aquifers. But currently, this project has been suspended, he said, even though two-thirds of the initiative was already completed when the government of former President Ashraf Ghani collapsed in 2021. Similarly, India and the Ghani government had signed on agreements in 2021 for the construction of the Saha Tut Dam in the Kabul River. Once completed, the dam could supply water to large parts of Kabul, Sadid said, but its fate is uncertain now. What can be done to address the water crisis? Experts recommended that development of the city's water infrastructure as the starting point to address the crisis. Artificial groundwater recharge